Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Healed and Chilled. And today we have yet another awesome and amazing, wonderful special guest. And you guys know how I like to do it here. I like for the guest to have control of the narrative. So, if you would, in your own words, from your own point of view, can you please introduce yourself and we will dive right into the interview?
Yes, hello everyone. One, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this call podcast today. So my name is Madia Brown. I am the founder and chief storytelling strategist of Brandire, and I am the founder and chief product officer of HelloBrand. So Brandire is an award-winning brand marketing communications agency located in Washington, D.C. I founded a company in 2006 while working as a visual journalist for the Washington Post. And since then have grown it to work with nearly 100 clients locally, nationally, and internationally. And we really focus on large organizations that have multiple different people in their audience who they need to communicate a very clear message to, but may have difficulty clarifying their unique value to their audiences. And so we help them tell their story in a way that's simple to understand and can help move the needle forward. And we typically specialize with working with organizations that impact people in community. And on the HelloBrand side, it is a brand intelligence tool that we've built to serve the needs of small businesses and small teams. We realize as we work with large enterprise organizations, not a lot of small businesses have access to the same resources, time, and expertise to really grow their brand. And we also know that small businesses are the heart of our economy. And so, because we believe in all things that help to impact people and community in great ways, we want to make sure that we're helping small businesses build up the foundation of their brand so that they can amplify their marketing and grow their business. So that is who I am. That is what I do, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome and very well said. And so, how did you get started in this sector? Was it something that you said, okay, look, there's a gap in the market. I want to help fill, help with storytelling, help with this, or is it something that you kind of grew into along your career journey?
Yeah, great question. So I like to tell people that as far as I can remember, there were three things I was very passionate about. The first two of those three things was art and telling stories. And so for storytelling was all the rage. I used to love to create narratives and prose and write all these different, do creative writing essentially. And so I ended up writing my first became a published author when I was in middle school. And the other part of it, I always had a passion as an artist, and so I learned how to draw very early in my life. Shout out to my sister who taught me how to draw. And I ended up winning my first art award when I was in second grade. And so
Oh.
so as I was going through my life, I always wanted to find a way to combine my two passions, art and telling stories. And then as I got slightly older, I was in middle school, I started, and that's when I learned how I can use my own skills and my own know-how to make money for myself. And that was
Hmm.
I stumbled into entrepreneurship. So I started my bracelet business when I was in sixth grade, making some money, enough money to go and buy junk food and all those other things that I couldn't get by asking my parents for money. And so that gave me a level of autonomy that I appreciated. And then also, I had an uncle in my life who owned a business. And I will always remember he would ask me for Christmas, like, what do you want for Christmas? And I would just tell him what I want with no kind of guardrails or no price points, just whatever you want. Now, of course, I wasn't ever thinking big enough for it. So I would always choose something small. But between me seeing him, owning a business and me doing it myself, I
Mm.
always had a passion for wanting to own a business. So fast forward as I continued my career, when one of the things I was wanting to do was figure out how I can combine all of my passions in one thing. And through different series of events, I stumbled into journalism. I thought because I would love writing, I wanted to be a writer, a reporter. And I realized that although I liked writing, I didn't really like the art of actually talking to people and interviewing people
Mm,
and doing all those things. And so, but in my role, discovering that, I realized that I could apply design to storytelling in terms of telling new stories. And so that's when I stumbled on the journey and the path to become a visual journalist, which led me to get a job at the Washington Post, which I was there for 13 years. And so when I first got to the Washington Post, for me, it was a combination of the two things that I was really passionate about, still the art, still design, but I had that passion for entrepreneurship that wasn't really being fulfilled by, going to a job every day. So
mhm,
I started using my design skills to help small businesses. I won't only say small businesses, startups. So these are colleagues, these are friends, these are family, these are friends of friends who are starting their businesses and they needed someone to help with their marketing. And so I say marketing with air quotes because at that time, I didn't really know what marketing was. I
mm,
knew that I know how to design logos and business cards and websites. And I thought that, okay, well, if I give someone those things, that will be enough for them, their business to take off. They can market their business, they can be successful, and all the things that we think that comes along with just having those things.
right.
But then I realized after spending a lot of time working 16, 18-hour days, working a
Mm,
full 8-hour shift, coming home, working on these small projects, um, I would check in with my clients at the time to see, okay, you have all your marketing assets, like where like you should be blowing up now, like everything should be great, you should be making all this money. And
mhm,
all the stories that I heard was like, yeah, but and I realized that a lot of them, even though I felt like they had all the tools they needed to begin to promote their business and be successful, there was a gap, something was missing. So, and that really impacted me because as an artist, you like to see your work live out in the world.
mm,
And if for me to spend all this time and effort creating these things and, these businesses failed before they began, that had me thinking about like, well, what does it actually mean to grow a successful business and what role does marketing play in that?
mm,
So that question led me on a journey. I ended up taking a sabbatical from the Post in 2010. I went to London, got my MBA in international business with a focus on marketing. And it was in that kind of year of discovery that I learned the relationship between marketing and branding and relationship between branding and storytelling. And I
mm,
realized it was a full circle moment for me because I was always a storyteller in many ways. But now you can use that skill set, just by being a journalist, by being a visual journalist, to tell those stories through brand. So a series of other things happened. I moved to Thailand, did my dissertation, came back to the States, came back to the newsroom for a few years, ended up in the as an art director before I left the Post, in working as the art director for the business section. And it was really there where I started seeing all these stories of businesses that have been able to leverage their story through their brand to create awareness, to create traction, to create growth. And so I
mm.
decided that I wanted to do that for other businesses as well. So in 2017, I decided to take the leap.
Yes, wow. And what a colorful journey and things like talking about how you first started and when you were a child and seeing your uncle and all these different things. And so I guess my question is of course, without revealing your secret sauce, what exactly is storytelling? Because we post on social media and everyone that doesn't fully understand the concept is like, I'm telling a story. I'm posting on social media. My brand all has the same color. So of course, without giving away your secret sauce, what exactly is storytelling? And then how does that relate to like growing your brand? Because to the naive eye, it's like as long as I'm posting, I'm telling a story, but you might not be telling it the proper way.
Yeah, great question. And it's a very layered question. I think that multiple people have different lenses and perspective around how they would define storytelling. For me, I've always looked at it in a way of how do you communicate very complex, how do you communicate one clear idea clearly and in a way that is emotionally resonant? Because there are multiple ways you can tell a story. Facts and figures can tell a story, but the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that people identify with the emotional component of a story more than just the logical component of a story. Meaning, like facts and figures, are people are less likely to remember it versus something that's emotionally charged, right? So even if you think about one of your most favorite, movie or book or something, there's an emotional component that kind of draws you or ties you into the one idea that they want to be communicated. I think in other ways is that when people are talking about storytelling, they're also talking from the lens of, having a beginning, middle, end, right? There's multiple different ways
Mm-hmm.
to frame a story, but I would say the most simplistic way to talk about it or to think about it from a business lens is how do you communicate one specific idea clearly and in a way where your audience understands it, they believe in it, they see the value in it, and they're emotionally tied to it. And so that's why a lot of people are actively creating content, but just because you're creating content around your brand doesn't actually mean you're actually telling that story if it's not meeting
Mm-hmm.
those things.
Very well said. Very well said. So, my next question is because you're very passionate and very articulate with how you're even like painting the picture with your words and things. So, for a business that's like struggling, at what point would they go to you? Like, what point would they bring your business in? Is it like once the idea is kind of at the baby stage, or is it later down the line once they've tried a few things? Like, when should they engage you?
That's a great question. So in terms of engaging me specifically, it depends on which hat I have on. So I'm assuming if you're talking to somebody who's just starting, that
Hmm.
would be more on the HelloBrand side because HelloBrand is more focused as a tool for small teams that are looking to build their brand foundation so that they can make their marketing a success. Um, I tell people that, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to answer this question because it's I think that when people start a business or a person start a business, and I counted this multiple times where I meet someone who's a startup and like I'm starting a business, and the very first thing they do is they come up with a name and then they go get a logo created.
Mm,
And they assume that that is them building the brand. I mean, that is one component of their brand, but that is not what the process of building a brand entails, right? Um, and so I like to tell people that before you can build a brand, you must first build a business.
mm,
And what I mean by that is that your brand sits on top of your business strategy. The problem that a lot of businesses, especially startups, struggle with when trying to brand themselves is that they're trying to use branding to solve problems that they haven't defined, that they haven't solved in their business strategy. And what I mean by that, so your business strategy should be really focused on what is it that you're trying to sell, who exactly you're trying to sell it to, what is the price point you're trying to sell it at, what are the things, how do you actually produce it, what's the cost, all those different things, like those are all the things that you should be very clear on. What is the business that you're in and how do you actually make money? Like
mm,
that needs to be very, very clear. And so people start businesses and they're making money, but they can't really answer those questions clearly on like who is your ideal customer? Who are what do they care? What do they care about? What are you producing for them? What is the value that you add? And so being very clear on like what is it that you actually do from a business standpoint is foundational because the process of building a brand sits on top of that. And what you're actually doing from a branding perspective is being able to clarify the value to your customer. So the brand part is kind of creating that story of what you are actually doing so that you can communicate value to your customer so you can help influence their expectations, you can help influence their memories, you can help influence their the stories that they tell about you. You can help influence all those things through how you tell the story about what you do for your customers.
Mm,
And so when people are trying to build a brand, or people who struggle with building their brand, is usually because they are not clear on the business that they're actually in, or the
mm,
business that they're trying to actually create, or the business strategy, how they're going to actually make money. Like, you got to be very clear on what that is in order for your brand to be successful. And then from there, your marketing sits on top of your branding. So oftentimes people interchange the words marketing and branding. They're not the same.
mhm,
Your branding is that story, is that layer, is that value, is all the things that you communicate about your business strategy to your customers, and how the customers want to hear it. It's clarifying what that is. And then marketing is, okay, now that I know what to say, who I'm saying it to, and where I need to say it, marketing is like, okay, now let me push it to the places that where I can find my customers.
mm,
So that is the different channels you have, like your social media, your website, your email, whatever. That is the activity of getting that word out to your customers in those places. But first, the brand is going to tell you where are those places that it needs to be, because it's really based off of where your customers are. Um, and so what I tell people is that your business have, at least three layers of strategies that you should have. Is your business strategy first, your brand strategy next, and then your marketing strategy on top of that. And usually people jump right to the marketing, but they don't have the
mhm,
brand, or people jump right to the brand, but they don't have a solid business. And so I would say that any bit, so where, going back to your question, where would be the part where people should really focus on brand? It should be after you're clear on what the business is. And
mm,
sometimes, I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't get, do some of the low-hanging fruit when it comes on to branding. I mean, that's the thing that people do. People throw up a website, people get a logo, people get some business cards, and they're like, okay, I have a business, I have a brand. And those are kind of starter elements of a brand, but it's not really um, the full um, the full essence of what building a brand really is about. And so what we find is that a lot of businesses who jump to branding before they're clear on their business strategy, they ultimately end up rebranding later or
mm,
spending extra money on that process because they haven't really spent the time to clearly identify what business they're in. And I'll say there's one last thing for people who are confused, like what's the business, what's the brand, what's marketing? So there are four components in our framework. It's called the Brandire brand building blocks framework. So there's four components of building a brand. And so the first component is what we call B. It's like defining what you want your brand to become.
mm,
What do you want your brand to be known for? What does what are the things that you want your brand to live up to in terms of the essence of what it does, right? So it's kind of communicating that from your business strategy, but manifesting that in a way where people can identify with it, right? So that's where your mission, vision, values come in. That's where you're looking at your value proposition. That's where you're looking at your unique selling points and your differentiators. That is kind of articulating what you want your brand to be. Then the next component is what we like to say look. And it's probably the most familiar aspect of building a brand, because a lot of it's usually the first place that businesses go first when they're trying to brand themselves. They focus on the look, they focus on the logo, they focus on the website, they focus on the business cards,
mm,
they focus on the design and the collateral and their slide decks and all those different things like that. And those things are important, but because they're important in a way, in two ways. One, if you have a brand that looks professional, immediately it can communicate trust versus a
mhm,
brand that may not be have a certain aesthetic that might not be when somebody looks at it, they can't see that it's trustworthy. So they say that a human makes a decision about a person within the first 7 seconds of whether or not they can
mm,
trust them. So the look is important because immediately somebody's going to determine whether or not they can trust you or your brand before you even say a word, just by looking at it.
mm,
So it is very important that you focus on the look. But the other point, the reason why look is important because it becomes a mental trigger. So you can see the color for Tiffany blue and automatically know that it's associated with the Tiffany blue, I mean the Tiffany brand. You
Mm-hmm.
can look at the silhouette of the mermaid and automatically know that's associated with Starbucks. So the visual
Mm-hmm.
cues are important because it helps trigger a memory so that the brand
Mm-hmm.
becomes top of mind when you're not even thinking about it, right? And so if you brand your look and feel consistently in a way that is it communicates trust and it triggers memory, it is important. But the challenge and what I caution business owners is that they put too much emphasis on look and not on the other three components. So what's the next component? The next component is say, and this is probably the most valuable component and the part that most businesses struggle with the most is really how do you talk about your brand? How do you tell that story, which we defined earlier, in a way that clearly communicates why somebody should choose you over your customer and communicates value to your customers as well. And so you want to make sure that it's called messaging. You want to make sure the messaging around what you do is clear so
Mm-hmm.
one, people understand, what you do and why they should choose you. And then the fourth one, which is actually the most important component of your brand, is the brand, is what we call do, which is the brand experience. So it's be, look, say, do. The brand experience is really about what do people feel when they experience every single touch point of your brand, whether it's your customer, I mean your team, whether it's your website, whether it's how they do the exchange, whether it's like invoicing, pricing, all those different things are touch points. And any friction in the experience can change whether or not somebody chooses you over someone else. And so we
Mm-hmm.
like to say that branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so the reason why we brand is so that we can influence what people say about us when we're not in the room. So you want to make sure that every one of those four components are in alignment. So what you look like, what you want to become is aligned with what you look like, is in line with what you
Mm-hmm.
say, and is in line with what you do. And a great example of what happens when those things aren't aligned, just think about like if you're in a dating pool and you see someone you're very attracted to. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at them first, right?
Yep.
Then you're going to instantly determine whether or not you can trust that person or want to get to know that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you might have an opportunity to, talk to them. And if you ever met somebody who's very, very attractive, and the minute they open their mouth, you're like, ooh, I don't know about this person. Right?
Yep, been there.
Exactly, right? So what you say also is important, right? Because you can look a certain way, but the minute you open your mouth and what you look like and when you say there's no alignment, then there's a lack of trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then let's say that they pass the first 2 points. They look good, they're saying all the right things, and then you get to hang out with them and you realize that their personality sucks. Or you
Mm-hmm.
realize that who they are as a person isn't aligned with the things that that you also value. You no longer are interested in that person, right? So that's another thing if you're misalignment around the B. And then the last thing is the do. Let's say that the person they look good, they're saying all the right things, you kind of like them, you're vibing, you got same values, but then they treat you like crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a really bad experience or whatever, right? Those are things that would make you not want to engage with that person anymore. And so when I tell people to think about their business, it's very much your business, how you communicate your business through your brand is as if how you would communicate as if you were a person. We say that your
Mm-hmm.
brand is a relationship with your customers. And so the same way as you can use an analogy about somebody that you're attracted to and how one of those things not in alignment, you no longer want to deal with them. That's the same way a customer might feel when they're interacting with you or your customer or your business or your brand. If one of those things are not in alignment, they're not going to want to deal with you and they're going to go to your customers. I mean, your competitors, sorry.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. There's some that I have to go back and listen to again to take my own notes in this definitely gonna be one. I usually save this for the end, but I'm gonna give you a signature round of applause because that was a lot. Wow. Okay. I could talk to you and listen to you all day, honestly, but I know that it's coming up at the tail end and things. So, is there anything that you wanted to cover? I do have a few more portions, but is there anything that you wanted to highlight or say or cover before we shift?
Oh no, we can keep going.
Okay, well again, that was a lot. So I'm gonna have to definitely listen to this. If you taught a class or wrote a book, I'll be first one in line. I tell you that much. Okay, so this is the part where I like to shift it up a little bit. If you have any questions for me, or if you have any thanks you want to give to anybody or any shout outs, now is your chance to do that.
Oh yeah, I would love to learn more about uh, why this podcast for you, why this topic, and who are the main people that you target, and what is the value that they look for when listening to your podcast?
Yeah, so great question. So, long story a little bit shorter. I originally started doing IG Live interviews on when COVID happened because I just noticed there was so much um, negativity just all on the internet all the time just because of whatever was happening when we were stuck in the house. So I was like, I have questions. I'm sure other people have questions, and I also want to be a part of a solution rather than just like, oh, there's so much negativity. So I started doing the IG Lives, which is on Instagram. And so every week I would have like 2 to 3 guests, ask them questions, just have like a really conversational type thing. And then it turned into like a almost like a virtual mentoring type situation. And I realized that, if I start to ask people even after COVID, can I go to lunch with you? They're like, I don't know you. But if I do a podcast, they're more likely to do so. And I thought, well, if I have questions about different aspects of business, different portions of life, then I'm sure other people have questions. So what better way than to continue it through a podcast and with Instagram. So it went through many iterations. First, I started with the entertainment industry, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. Then I moved to artistry because I'm an artist as well. I do like paint hats and things with my sister. So that's why I laughed when you said with your sister because I'm the older one and she's better. She does more like you. If you see her painting, you know exactly what it is. If you see my painting, you have to squint and you have to interpret something.
Which
So
is funny because my sister's older and she taught me how to draw, but she can't draw with a lick. So it's
fair enough. So where I get that totally. So then I was like, I started doing what I'm doing now, which is working with children and then teens and college students, just trying to help them develop confidence, leadership skills, social skills. And I thought, well, I can still do the podcast, but perhaps this way I can help their parents and help because if the parents are okay, then the children will be okay. Just off the strength of if the parents are getting different types of information and things. So, my goal for this podcast of Healed and Chilled is to just be a safe space for people at whatever stage in their journey. And hopefully, that'll get them to be happier, healthier, more emotionally calm with the way that the world is. There's always a forest fire everywhere you look on the news, or just so much going on. So I just want to be like a safe space where people can come. They know they're going to get some interesting knowledge, some information, and then hopefully that will help them so that they can be less stressed and they can be more present for the people that I like to serve, which are their children.
awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, I'm excited and thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And then to close out, we have, unless you had any shout outs or any other questions, and because I know we're a little bit on the tail.
Yeah, just shout out to my sister. She's
end.
and my tribe and my clients, and just people who have supported me on the journey.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so then in the closing, I have 3 cliche questions that I ask everybody at the end. The first one is, if you can think of a time when you were younger and in a darker place, what's one piece of advice that you know now that you really wished you would have known back then?
Oh, I would say that it gets better.
Mm,
Um, that whatever you think you're happy, like everything that you go through happens for a reason. And it's so cliche, like this cliche question for a cliche answer, but it's so true. Like there's been moments in my life when there's something that I really wouldn't really wanted and I didn't get it. But when I look back, I'm like, I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't get it, like the universe had my back in many ways. And so sometimes we want things that really aren't meant for
Mm,
us. Um, and that you kind of have to trust the universe a little bit. And I think the other part of it is that, and I'm actually still learning this lesson now, that every heartache or every, thing that doesn't go your way is part of the growth journey.
mm,
And I tell my team this, that um if you're doing something and it's not challenging, then you're not growing.
mm,
And so you really like growth, if even if you think about just, getting taller or getting older or whatever, like, or just use an analogy of working out in a gym, like in order to build muscles, you got to break something down, right? Like it's painful
mm-hmm,
for you to get healthy and work out and be in your best shelf. Like you have to go through that journey. And so every time you work through those things that are difficult in the moment, and then you look back, it's like, oh, well, I needed that difficulty to grow.
mm,
And I would say that this journey through entrepreneurship is the biggest trial by fire, painful thing that you will ever
mm-hmm,
go through. But what I tell people was that the person that I am now is totally different than the person that I was as an employee.
mm,
When things were easier and things were smoother, and I didn't really have any, major challenges. I just had to go to work, do my thing, go home. Like the amount of things that I've been able to accomplish, the new person who I am now,
mm.
I wouldn't have been able to become to this person if I didn't go through some trials and tribulations. And so, as long as you look at trials and tribulations as a teaching moment, of what you can do or what you shouldn't do, or how as long as you are learning from it and you're not just having things happen to you, you're absorbing the emotional feedback of what you've done, and you are a person who's like, I'm going to pull myself up by the bootstraps. I'm going to
Mm.
figure out how I can take what I've learned and pivot and try to figure out something else. um then you're heading in the right direction, no matter how painful it may feel.
Yes, yes, yes. And then the second cliche question is the internet and the universe work in mysterious ways. So we have no way of knowing who will hear this at some point. Is there any person, organization, or group that if this interview does come across their desk that you would really like to work with?
Oh, I didn't think the question was going to turn that direction. Hmm. So where we've evolved over the years on the agency side, so the agency is Brandire. So we've evolved in this space of realizing that we like to do good work, that impacts people and communities in good ways.
Mm,
And so what we love to do is help, especially on the corporate side. A lot of corporations, they have an agency of record that handles their major, like direct to consumer marketing. But oftentimes, a lot of the good work that these corporations are doing in the community, those stories aren't being elevated. And it's usually because it's an afterthought or they're focused more on the product or whatever. And I think there's an opportunity, especially in this environment where people are feeling jaded in the moment about corporations, really being able to lean into some of their corporate social responsibility stories, how they are creating impact in communities through some of their foundations and some of their community work, and helping them talk about that return on investments for stakeholders, their stakeholders, but also for consumers and also for the community at large. So what we do is we help those organizations better clarify their message around a lot of their impact work, and make sure that all of their stakeholders are in alignment around the value of continuing to do good work in the community. So that, because if you do good work in the community, and support the community that you want to buy your products and services, they will continue to support you. So um,
mhm,
that that's one. And then on the HelloBrand side, the AI brand intelligence system side, we love to work with actually nonprofits. Again, going back to doing good work with good organizations that focus on doing good. We don't exclusively just work with social impact organizations. Again, we work with corporations, etc. But we do like to align our work with people who are making an impact in community. And so one of the reasons why we built our tool, HelloBrand, is because that nonprofits as a whole tend to have a limited budget, limited team capacity, limited expertise
Mhm.
in-house to be able to tell those impact stories in a way in a way at scale and in a systematic way. And so what HelloBrand does, it's built for small teams. It gives an intelligence layer around their branding and their marketing so they know that every dollar that they spend or every resource and time that they spend on building out their marketing and their branding is done effectively, and they know that they are creating things that are on brand and that are moving their mission and their conversation forward. So yeah, so we'd love to work with a nonprofit organization who would love to learn more about HelloBrand and how HelloBrand can basically create more capacities in their marketing and communications team to help them tell their story more effectively.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, of course, the last cliche question, even though I will put any links that you send in the description. If someone wants to contact you or work with you, what's the best way to do that? And if someone wants to stay updated with what you do, because I know you're speaking and things, what's the best way to keep up? And then what's the best way to contact and work with you?
Yeah, so on the agency side, our email is Brandire, Brandire, agency, all one word, dot com, so brandireagency.com. And then on the HelloBrand side, it is HelloBrand, HelloBrand.io. So you can reach us there. And if you would like to keep up with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, my first name and last name, Madia Brown, and I'm happy to connect.
All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I know I got a lot of gems out of all the things you said. Like I said, I'm going to have to go back and re-listen, and I'm going to give you, before we go, another signature round of applause. I know that our listeners got some gems out of this, and I just want to thank you for taking time to interview with me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Looks
Of
forward to staying in
course.
contact.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode of Healed and Chilled.
All right. Bye.